Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Unexplained Reality. I'm Brian Quinn, and with me is my son,
Harrison Quinn, as always.
the one and only, the giant of Blythewood. Hope everybody's having a good week, and hopefully you'll get a little better with this recording. We've been just doing our thing this week. Work, school, fun stuff. Waiting for summer to get here, right, buddy?
Mm-hmm.
So, we're going to get started tonight. We go through some news. You got any news stuff? Anything fun and cool?
Clear.
I got a couple things here. I saw this week on, let's see, CBS News, I guess it was. I saw it on a number of places, but this particular article is coming from CBSNews.com. And it's about the blood falls in Antarctica, and that apparently scientists have solved the mystery of that. It says scientists have long been puzzled by the origins of the mysterious blood-red waterfall that streams down Taylor Glacier in Antarctica. First discovered by geoscientist Griffith Taylor in 1911, the source of the blood fall's eerie red ooze finally has an explanation thanks to new research out of the University of Alaska Fairbanks and Colorado College. The falls are fed by a large source of salty water trapped beneath the glacier for possibly more than 1 million years, the research team explained in a study published in the Journal of Glaciology. The salts in the brine made this discovery possible by amplifying contrast with the fresh glacier ice. The study's lead author, Jessica Badgley, said in a press release. Blood Falls is famous for its sporadic releases of iron-rich salty water which turns bright red, like something out of a horror movie, once the iron reacts with the surrounding air. For her research, Bagley and her team tracked the brine with radio echo sounding, a method of studying glaciers and ice sheets with radar that uses two antennae, one to transmit electrical pulses and another one to receive the signals. So I won't go into all of it. That was pretty cool because I've seen pictures of that. It's kind of disturbing to see that blood red excretion coming out from under the glacier. Let's see, I've got some other ones here. This one's kind of cool. This comes from Phantoms and Monsters. And if I can get my scrolling to cooperate here. This comes out of Cambridge, New York. They got a mystery. Somebody had a trail cam. It says a mysterious picture of a young girl in the woods near Cambridge has many locals there wondering who she is and where did she come from. Landowners just want to find the family, but now the whole town is buzzing. It is the picture that has everyone talking. Is it just a little kid lost in the wood, or is it something supernatural? People around the Cambridge have mixed opinions. I think it's a ghost. Why do you say that? Because you look at it. It's definitely a spirit, said one person. Another one says, I think it's just a little girl playing in the woods. I don't think it's a ghost. Someone else said, I don't know. It's kind of hard to believe whatever you see on social media nowadays. Well, that's true. But it does look pretty interesting. It says the film picture was taken by a trail cam in the woods off Route 74 in Cambridge. The picture has had the whole town talking. Basically, it's a little girl. She looks like maybe 7 or 8, 9 years old, something like that, walking in the woods or playing in the woods. Kind of creepy. I don't know. I don't know. Why would a kid be out there like that? I'm guessing it's a night shot. So, but it's pretty interesting. Check it out on phantomsandmonsters.com. It's a pretty cool article and a creepy picture. I have another one here from Cryptozoology News. Actually, I got two from there. There's one about a Bigfoot sighting in Belton, North Carolina. And I got all excited about this because, we're one state away from there. Until I found out the sighting actually happened, I think, in the 80s. But a 47-year-old woman, Tracy Hibberts, told Cryptozoology News she was at a restaurant near a wooded area when she spotted the hominid. I was going to smoke a cigarette before my family came out of the restaurant we were eating at. She explains the restaurant had a deck out to the side of it that went out over the water where you could feed the turtles and ducks. The Belmont woman says that the restaurant was out in a very rural area and that she was the only one to see the alleged Sasquatch. I was alone and walked down to the water quietly. As I approached the deck, I saw it bent down in the water. I did not know what it was until it saw me. Reportedly, the creature stood up and ran fast across the water in plain daylight, and in an instant it was completely gone. It says the alleged sighting, which occurred in the summer of the late 80s, lasted about 30 seconds. She recalls the creature as being brownish, dark color, but admitted that she was not able to see a face because it was running so fast. She only saw it bent over, body and back, and it was fast like nothing I ever saw. When she told her husband dismissed it as a deer, but she said no deer runs on two legs. So it was kind of cool. I wish it would have been current and not years ago. This is another one from cryptozoologynews.com. And this is about UFO sighting. 2 Texans see a pair of triangle-shaped UFOs in Belmont, Texas. A woman in Bell County says 2 triangle-shaped UFOs chased her car. Jessica, a 34-year-old Belton resident, told Cryptozoology News she was driving home with her son on Sparta Road when they noticed the unidentified flying objects back in February. It was 8:30 p.m. and I was past the old Fleetwood. I saw 2 sets of 3 bright glowing orange lights and 2 separate triangles. They looked as though they were over the high school football field, so I just thought some kind of game was going on. As I kept driving, I realized they stayed in front of me to the right and were not over the school. The woman adds that as they passed Sparta Elementary, they also noticed smoke around the lights. I could see ripples going through the smoke. I was freaking out. I pointed them out to my son, and when he looked up, there was only 1 triangle left, and the wavy smoke was thick around it. Jessica claims that as they drove close to the intersection, she tried to snap a picture of the unusual sighting. But when I put my phone in the air, there were no lights. I looked around the sky, and there was no trace of anything, she said. About the 4-minute sighting, it was completely silent. She described the lights as huge and said that she had never seen anything like it. She created a sketch, which is not really sure. Can't make it out, but she created a sketch, and it's not very good in my opinion, but it's kind of cool. It sounds like it's similar to maybe to like the Phoenix lights that happened in '97, where thousands of people saw these large triangular shaped object in Phoenix, Arizona. Anyways, I think that's pretty much all I got. You got anything to add, buddy?
Mm-mm.
So I guess we can roll into it. You think? All right. Tonight we're going to do something a little different. This is not really crypto news, but it's still something, it's a mystery. It's historical value, and it's something I've wondered about for a long time. I've read a lot of stuff about it and saw a lot of documentaries and stuff. So, and this is specifically about the Shroud of Turin. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. And like I said, it's not crypto news, but it's historical, and it's been a mystery for many years. And just going to have a little discussion about it. Basically, the Shroud of Turin, for those that don't know, and just as a disclaimer, we're not, because I've stated before that I'm a Christian, and we're not pushing our faith on anybody, and this is just a historical discussion, so I don't want to turn anybody off. People believe whatever they want to believe. I'm not, going to beat anything that I believe over anybody's head. And this is strictly from a historical point of view and just a mystery to me, and I think it's very interesting. And basically, so to get into it, the Shroud of Turin is it's a piece of linen. It's a very fine piece of linen that was that is believed to be the burial cloth of Jesus. And the shroud is it actually resides in. It's called the Shroud of Turin because it resides in Turin, Italy, and it's been there for over 4 centuries. It's kind of interesting because like I said, it's a very fine linen, and basically the cloth has an image on it and different staining, which is appears to be a person's face or a man's face and some body features. There also appears to be staining, which could be blood. And actually, it's been proven to be blood. It's been sampled. So it's kind of eerie and it's kind of fascinating. The shroud is 14 feet long, and typically what they would do in a burial situation is the person would be basically wrapped in this. I guess from head to foot. They'd be laid on the linen, and the linen would be draped over them. And that was, after they had passed. And so that's what this piece of linen is. And it's kind of funny because, there's been a lot of speculation over the years about this being forged during medieval times. And basically what that comes from is over the years, scientists were wanting to and historians were wanting to have the linen, the shroud, tested by scientists to have it carbon dated and figure out where it came from. So it took a lot of coaxing, but they finally got the Catholic Church to agree to have this carbon dating done in April 21st, 1988. They decided to go ahead and do it. And it's kind of an interesting story about that is because they spent all this effort trying to convince the Catholic Church, hey, we need to test this, and we know it's you believe it to be Jesus' burial cloth, but we want to prove the dating on it. And I know you don't want us to mess with it, but we need to take a little sample from it. And finally, the Catholic Church said, yeah, you know what? Okay, we'll do it. It'd be interesting to seal the deal here. And then they get down to the actual day when they're going to clip the piece off of it. And the 2 Italian guys that were in charge of it can't decide on where to take the sample from. So there's like an argument and there's a big hoopla about those guys. They kind of fussed and bickered about it. And then finally they decided, and they wound up taking the sample. The problem was they took the sample from like the worst possible location you could take it. But they realized it at that time. They just took it and said, hey, you know what? Let's take it from this corner here. It'll be very minimal, and you're not taking away from the primary part of the linen that has the staining and stuff on it, the interesting parts of it. And so they took that piece and they carbon dated it. Well, when they carbon dated it, they came back with the results, and on 13th of October 1988 is when the results came back, and they dated that piece of material, that linen, from between 1260 and 1390 AD. Well, a lot of the scientists that were on there were, they were with the notion that this was a forgery, blah blah. So when this date came back, they were like, see, we told you this thing was not real. Somebody forged it in the Middle Ages, blah blah blah. Well, in most cases that would be acceptable, but it's kind of interesting with the history of it, So so this sample was taken from, like I said, from a corner. The problem is that corner is historically they have drawings and other documentation that, over these many years, the shroud has been displayed many times publicly, and been handled by hundreds and hundreds of people. And in many of these situations where depictions have been drawn of these public representation, public displays, you can see in these depictions, these drawings and the documentation in different places, that the shroud was handled all around the edges, and specifically that corner. And many of them, it shows people holding it in that corner. So, the problem comes in is that that shroud has been handled as known fact prior to this. I mean, this was in 1988. I mean, all through the 20th century, people were handling it, and it was on display a number of times. And so basically, that whole section would be contaminated. The whole edge of it would be contaminated, really, because of all the handling. And like I said, the irony of this whole situation with these two guys fussing about it and all that. So, what was another part of not just the contamination, but it was believed that, parts of the shroud around the edge had worn over the years and probably had been stitched with newer pieces of fabric too. So just to get a little bit of history about the shroud, prior to the 16th century, there wasn't very much information about where the shroud had been. So this kind of adds to the mystery of it, not just that, is this real or is it a fake? But they also got this periods of time where the shroud, nobody knew where it was at. And really, like I said, prior to the 16th century, there's very little information on where the shroud had been or where it had come from. Kind of what happened in 1578, the shroud first showed up in Turin, Italy, and it came from the French town of Chambéry, which I think is in the Alps. But the shroud's owner was a man named Duke Emmanuel Filiberto, and he had arranged to have the shroud brought to this cardinal named Charles, and I'm going to probably butcher his last name, Borromeo, who was on pilgrimage. After viewing the shroud, Borromeo had requested a public displaying of the shroud. He was so excited about it, so he had it publicly displayed at the Piazza de Castello, and so he set up this grand thing for this grand display. He knew people were going to be excited about it, and so they did, and they had this big display, big thing, shindig set up, and they had all these dignitaries and high-ranking officials and clergy showed up, and when they displayed it and unveiled the shroud, the people went crazy. They just erupted, they were just ecstatic about the shroud, and after this public display, there were hundreds more showings, through the years. Each of these showings exposed the shroud to handling by hundreds more people. So there was, more exposure to contaminants, more exposure to sunlight and other materials. And all this takes a toll on a piece of linen. I mean, linen's pretty fine material, and this has caused deterioration over the years of the shroud. So then you fast forward, that was, 1587, and then through the years you have all these showings. Well, you fast forward to 1898, and there was this French photographer named Secondo Pierre, and he was commissioned to take the first photographs of the shrouds. Photography is fairly new at this point, and so Pierce does what he was commissioned to do. He gets the shroud and he takes pictures of it, and he goes and has those plates developed, and he discover something miraculous about those plates. In those images of, taking the picture of the shroud, you can it really develops the facial features of the person, whoever was wrapped in this material. And it's kind of interesting because that would lead later on to pathologists reviewing those images and being able to determine the points on the face and other parts of the body where injuries were sustained. In 1978, the shroud, there was a project that came about, and a team was formed. It was called the Shroud of Turin Research Project. And they were given access to the shroud. And what they did is they did very detailed analysis of the shroud. They used different procedures and processes to analyze and try to verify the shroud. And the procedures they used were the same procedures that they would use to verify artwork and, find artwork that maybe was stolen, or, they want to verify its authenticity. So they did these different procedures, and a lot of these procedures involved exposing the shroud to low levels of radiation, where they could detect pigments and the types of paints used to create it if it was a hoax. The funny thing is that through all this, this is the same kind of processes they would use to detect pigments and paints that were used for artwork or forgeries or whatever. If they were looking at fine artwork. However, when they did this, they didn't find any pigments on the shroud. So after reviewing their findings, they basically said, this is not a painting. There's not, because people had speculated, some fine artists had created this as a hoax in the medieval times and painted the images on there and the staining and everything. Well, these guys, the Shroud of Turin Research Project, did their analysis and they said, no, that's not true. There's no pigment on here. So the team found that the areas that had coloring or staining were on the outer layers of the linen. So it was just the first couple layers of the linen. So it wasn't all the way saturated into, deep down into the core of the linen fibers. So they basically just said, this is not created by an artist. We don't know how it was created, but it wasn't created by an artist. It's not a painting. And they believe that this was actually created, the staining and what you see on the shroud was actually created by a man, by staining from his body. So even though the Shroud of Turin Research Project work took place 10 years prior to the carbon dating, during the research and testing, the team used ultraviolet imaging to examine the shroud. This testing came into play after the carbon dating results, because after the carbon dating came about and they said, hey, this is from 1260 to 1390, the team, the Shroud of Turin Research Project team, they came back and they said, wait a minute, let's review these UV test results. And what they found was the corner where that sample was taken for carbon dating had dramatically different UV results from the rest of the shroud. And this difference, they said positively points to the fact that that section of the shroud where the carbon dating sample was taken had a different makeup than the rest of the shroud. So the belief is through the centuries of handling of the shroud and hundreds of people, the shroud would have been coated around the edge with many different types of bacteria, other contaminants, like I said before. So if this sample was taken for carbon dating was not cleaned properly, then the results would have been skewed by these bacteria. So thus making the dating of the shroud to be more modern than expected. Also, there could be, like I said, patchwork been done on the shroud, so the material wouldn't match up for that reason. Also, and another interesting thing is the UV testing also found that shroud had been soaked in blood. So the images from the shroud were examined by pathologists, and probably I'm sure there's more than one, but they identified characteristics of the image of the man to be conducive with injury sustained from being beaten or tortured, as well as many of these injuries matched those described as having been sustained by Jesus during the events leading up to his crucifixion and sustained during his crucifixion. So they basically found that, like, around the head, some of the swelling, some of the blood stains matched up with what would have, what was described in the Bible as having happened to Jesus. So you've got scarring around the head or blood around the head from, the crown of thorns. You have the punctures in the hands and the feet from the crucifixion. You have the staining on the back where you can see, I think one pathologist said it was like 100 lacerations on the back, which would be from the scourging prior to the crucifixion. And then, just a lot of stuff matched up. There's supposedly Jesus was then punctured by a Roman soldier through the side with like a spear, and that is evident on the shroud. So that's why people thought, this is a hoax. Medieval times, somebody just painted this elaborate thing to make it look like Jesus' burial cloth, just to be like propaganda for the Christian faith. So anyways, a lot of these modern tests are saying these things match up and this is actually blood. I mean, obviously I don't know whose blood it is, but it's very interesting because it went from medieval time, it was a fad, a fabricated thing, to now we've proven that actually that material that was tested is, you can't really rely on that. What's interesting also is there's a section of the shroud called the poker holes, and they don't understand how these holes originate or if there's any significance to them, but there's a Hungarian manuscript in Budapest National Library that describes the preparation of Jesus' body for burial. And part of that manuscript, there's a very detailed drawing of the preparation. So there's people, they drew people working on Jesus, wrapping him in the linen. And the linen there's a lot of detail about the linen. You can see the herringbone pattern of the weave. And also there you can see the poker holes. And the poker holes are these 4 holes on one part of the linen, and they're evident in the Shroud of Turin. So the interesting part about that is this manuscript in the Budapest National Library is called the Prey manuscript. And that manuscript is dated at 1190 AD. So that's 70 years prior to what the carbon dating said, which is 1260 to 1390. So now we have the Prey manuscript in Budapest that dates that, from that picture, which is an accurate depiction of the Turin, Shroud of Turin. That manuscript's dated 1190, so that's prior to the carbon dating that was done in 1988. Now, I mean, you have that, so you've got the shroud back to 1190 AD. Well, to get it further back, you have to look at what is contained in a cathedral in the town of, I think it's called Oviedo, Spain, which is in northern Spain. In this cathedral, locked up, they have a silver ark that was brought there from, I believe, it arrived there from Jerusalem in the 7th century. Contained in this silver ark were a number of historical Christian relics and something called the Sudarium Domini, and it's translated as the Sudarium of the Lord. The Sudarium is a small cloth. It's a linen cloth also, but it's not quite as fine a material as what would be for a shroud or burial cloth. But the Sudarium is basically a headpiece, and what they would do is the Jewish faith believes that your soul is contained in your blood. So if there's a death, what they do is they take the Sudarium and they believe that you need to contain that blood. So they would wrap it around the person's head that passed in order to, kind of contain the blood. So that's what the Sudarium is. So they call this one the Sudarium Domini, which is the Sudarium of the Lord. The Sudarium is, like I said, a low-grade linen, and this one that was in the ark was significant because it was in this silver ark, and it was brought from Jerusalem in the 6th century or 7th century. And like I said, in Jewish belief, they use the Sudarium. And since the Sudarium Domini has a very detailed history, they know exactly that it came from Jerusalem, and it was in Jerusalem in the 6th century. So the history is documented very well in many different countries and various documents. In the Testament of the Cathedral of Oviedo, the silver ark and all of its contents are very well documented. So now you've got the shroud going back to the 6th century in Jerusalem. Well, I take that back. This is a Sudarium, but during the testing of the shroud and the testing of the Sudarium, they found out that the blood stains in both of these pieces of linen match. So now you have a match. So you have a link between the Sudarium of Domini and you have a link between the Shroud of Turin. So now you get it back to the 6th century because that's, the Sudarium was in Jerusalem in the 6th century. So if they have the same blood on them, it's highly unlikely that someone kept that blood around for, 600 years and then say, okay, let's make the Shroud of Turin and put the blood stains on it. That would be a huge,
You can't keep blood that long without it.
Right. Especially not back then in that technology. And how are you going to do that? Pass it down to centuries for, 600 years and say, okay, in 600 years, we want you to fabricate the Shroud of Turin and make this fake thing, Anyway, so, so also, on the looking back at the shroud, if you look at the staining on it, you have the scourge wounds across the back. Like I said, there was I think 100 on that shroud that match up with what you would expect from a crucifixion. If you look at what happens with the crucifixion, the Romans were are a brutal bunch. Regardless, this is who is being crucified. They used something called a flagrum, and what the flagrum was it was used like a wooden handle and had 3 pieces of leather attached to it.
It was like a whip, but with a bunch of little whips on it.
Yeah. So it'd have 3 pieces of leather off of it, and then they would have lead, some kind of metal or bone tied to the end, and then they would whip you with it, and it would tear and lacerate the skin. So that was the scourging. So they would scourge you and basically torture you to the point of almost to death. And then they would take you and crucify you, which involved you being nailed to a wooden post or cross with, some refer to as a tree, whatever. I don't think there was they probably didn't have any specific, detail on they were just whatever they could get you hung up on. They would hang you by your ankles and by your wrists. which would eventually kill you anyways, because your body can't sustain hanging like that on its own weight. Not to mention it being incredibly painful. So you have on the shroud, you have the scourge marks. You have injuries on the face, which include bloodstains and images of swelling on the head and around the eyes. You have blood staining on the face and head, which would be consistent with a crown of thorns being pressed in the head, which supposedly happened. You have the blood stains on the hands and feet, which correspond to the nails during crucifixion. You also have blood stains on the side, which correspond to the spear. So, now to this point, we had the shroud to the 6th century, if we connect it to the Sudarium. However, they had because of the nature of the linen, what they did is they brought in another small team, which the head of that team was, I believe she's a PhD in historical textiles or textile history, something like that. And what they did is they did some work on preserving the shroud because, it's been deteriorating, it's been exposed to light, to air, different kinds of air, different qualities of air, bacteria. All this, works on the linen, like we said before. So what they did is when they were working on this to do some preservation work on it, they noticed that there was this really, on the back side of the shroud, there was this very fine stitch seam. And the person that was working on it recognized this stitching style. And she said that this stitching style was found in another piece of linen, and that linen was found in the ruins of Masada in Israel, which is a big, temple, big fortress on top of the hill. Not really a temple, big fortress. That fabric from Masada was had identical stitching to what's found on the Shroud of Turin. That piece of material, that fabric from Masada, has been dated to the time of Jesus. So now we have it to the 1st century. So, that kind of pulls it together, that you have the Shroud of Turin, it's kind of a stretch, but you could kind of see that, if you had this fine stitching on the Shroud of Turin and now you had this piece that was dated to the time of Jesus in Masada in Israel, you could pull it. It's not a far jump to say, okay, well, this material might have been created by the same person or at the same time, It's very unique, but anyways, it's still controversy. Nothing's 100%. It's no different than if we're talking about Bigfoot or aliens. Nobody really knows. Maybe the government knows, but, we're not getting that from them. But, it's any other mystery is a interesting historical mystery. And, there's always going to be, I don't think, where we're going to know the answer, but the controversy, is going to remain around the Shroud of Turin. You're always going to have the ones that are going to believe it's elaborate fake. You're going to want, and then you're going to have, the Christian community believes it's the actual burial cloth of Jesus Christ. I guess the only possibility or resolution would involve redoing the carbon dating, using a different portion maybe of the shroud, based off the UV testing discussed, or found in the 1978 testing. You could figure out where would be the best place to take a sample, and then take a sample from there and try to carbon date it. And even that, you're probably still going to have, no matter what the results are, you're still going to have controversy. It's not going to. It's no different than looking at the Patterson-Gimlin film. You have those that believe that was an elaborate hoax, and you believe, it doesn't matter how much you study that film, if you weren't there or you don't have a body for Bigfoot, you're not, some people are just not going to believe. And, it's the same with any subject we talk about, really. That's why it's unexplained, but it's, reality. So that's what our show's about, right, buddy?
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I hope you don't think we were trying to push our beliefs. This is a historical discussion on a fascinating piece of material, regardless of what your belief is. It is a fascinating piece of material. It's fascinating, the staining, the imaging on it. It's just, it's incredible. It's pretty cool. And anything dealing with history or historical value I think is worth checking into. So I think that's going to wrap it for tonight. You got anything to add, buddy? You didn't have much to say tonight?
Nope.
So we got to figure out what we're going to do for our next show. As we said before, I guess we didn't intro with this. We just jumped right into the subject tonight. But if you have any stories or ideas, or just want to comment about the show, you can hit us up on unexplained.reality@yahoo.com. You hit us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're on all that. Let us know what you think about the show. Please rate us, comment, all that on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, wherever you're going to get this from. Give us some feedback. We'd appreciate it. We really want to do subjects that you want to hear about, and hopefully you're enjoying the shows. And we don't really know if you don't tell us, how we're doing. We're not trying to be something elaborate and wild here. We're just doing our thing and trying to have fun doing it. We hope to have. I think we're going to have a good show coming up in the future. I'm not sure when we're going to do it, but shouldn't be in next maybe 2-3 weeks. It's going to be a good subject matter, and it's we'll actually have some guests on. I have about 3 guests lined up to be on that show. So that'll be probably our first where we have actual other people instead of us just rambling and jabbering on. But anyways, check us out. Comment, rate us. Every bit you rate us helps us move up and get seen by other people and heard by other people. I would like to thank. You have anything else to add, buddy?
Mm-mm.
All right, so we'll just roll out of here. We'd like to thank Ricky Young Music for the music for his podcast. He's a local guy. I've said it many times. He's a friend of ours and does some great stuff. He's from this area and great singer, great musician. So RickyYoung.com. We'd like to thank our podcasts that we like to listen to. Sasquatch Chronicles, OK Talk, Into the Fray Radio, Saswat,
The
Graylian Report, Monsters Among Us, and The Confessionals. Oh, and Mysterious Universe. Can't forget about those guys. And a new one that just came out from Ryan Sprague called Somewhere in the Skies, and it's a good one too. He just started that podcast a couple weeks ago. So check those guys out and let them feel your love. And I guess that's going to be it for tonight, buddy. Unless you got anything else to add.
Nope.
All right. We out.
Liquor, 110 proof, pure grain alcohol. Barkeep, bring me a whiskey. Don't keep me waiting, come on down here and hit me.